A doctor at the Veterans Administration Hospital here in Albuquerque told the Daily Beast patients with heart conditions, a possible brain tumor, and even gangrene are not getting prompt care, and that his colleagues may be hiding evidence of scheduling delays after similar stories broke at the Phoenix VA. Now, Senators Tom Udall and Martin Heinrich are pushing for more funding to expand ongoing investigations into the VAs. The VA began an audit last week of the Albuquerque facility. Joining us to talk about this and other news of the week is line regular Dan Foley. He is former House Minority Whip. Also joining us is Associated Press reporter Jerry Klossing. We're awfully glad she's back. Another regular here is Rob Nicoleski of the New Mexico Watchdog, and we welcome back Javier Benavides of the Center for Civic Policy. Rob, as one outlet phrased it, this just keeps growing, almost like a cancer. You know, certainly most reporters have us all caught up to speed here, what's going on. We don't know officially if someone has died from one of these things. But let's go right to the Albuquerque situation. It's about confidence, isn't it, in the VA? When you walk in the front door, you want to feel confident you're going to get the service you deserve as a veteran, right? So what happens to confidence in this kind of a situation?
Well, I think confidence is pretty much shot right now because, I mean, we're talking about deaths here.
Right.
We're talking about lots of them, at least 40 of them. In fact, I saw something this morning, 23 deaths in a facility, 6 deaths in a facility in South Carolina.
Wow.
And I think the other thing here to take a close look at is we've had problems with the VA system for a long time, but specifically in the Daily Beast story, said they were talking about the cardiac unit there, and the entire 8-person department at that facility in Albuquerque supposedly sees as many patients in a week as a single private practice cardiologist sees in 2 days.
Ouch.
I think that's a very important thing to see the difference between private care and government care.
Exactly. Javier, good to see you, by the way.
Thanks, James.
Always love it when you're here. It turns out there's a financial incentive or disincentive, as it were, with this. This always drives me crazy. When you've got a big system like this, hey, we'll speed up this process. If you do it, you'll make some extra dough. Guess what happens? You know what I mean? So is it a process issue or a morals issue, or what's going on here?
Well, I think the outrage about that point in particular is justifiable. You know, the incentive motive being included in the delivery of health care, that's exactly what the Affordable Care Act was trying to address, and especially for our veterans. It's a travesty, you know, that doctors, they've already got huge loads, and for them to reduce their loads in order to achieve bonuses, in our VA system, it's just, I can see why people are concerned and that this is a scandal. You know, this is about the true cost of war, and I think, you know, funding has been talked about as one of the solutions, and the budget's been increased by 1/3 in the last 5 years. But what we're seeing is, if you look at over the course of time, the number of veterans who've come back from wars, this is the true cost of war, of the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and even Shinesky himself was talking about back in 2002 that we had to be prepared for 300,000 veterans to come back and be dealing with things like TBI, PTSD, combat trauma, and I think what we're seeing is that we just weren't prepared for that, and we owe it to those veterans.
Dan, you're a veteran, and I'm curious your initial gut reaction when you heard this story. What was your very first thought?
No surprise.
Seriously.
I mean, Javier raises a good point. The problem is that same stuff Javier just said about now has been going on since the Vietnam War. Wow. I mean, this is no shock. I mean, anybody that's shocked that this is going on in the VA system hasn't paid attention to the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. You know, there's a couple problems, in my opinion. The VA system is based on the amount of people that are in their care. That's how they get their budget. There's no incentive to get people healthy. There's no incentive to get people out of the system. It's get the people in the system. You know, what's really disheartening to me is, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, is that if this happened in a prison, if this happened in any number of other places that we could talk about, there would be people lining up to sue the government.
But you're right.
And yet, the people who need our help the most, the people that we asked for $1,200 a month to put their life on the line to protect our freedoms, are getting dumped on. And this is not an administration thing. This is not just this administration. This is not a partisan thing. This has been the VA style of operation, mode of operation, I think since the inception of the VA system. And yet, it takes this to find this out, and yet people, like we're talking around this table, we're surprised. I'm not surprised. There's stories out there that have been written about, I mean, just, you know, I know Hollywood sensationalizes things, but that scene in Born on the 4th of July, when he's in that VA clinic in New York and the rats are crawling around him and the people are dead on the floor and the people, I mean, I'm not saying the VA system is that way today, but it's not much better. And if we can't take care of the people we ask to put their life on the line at some point for nothing other than the promise we'll take care of them when they come back, that's going to judge our society in the future, and we're not passing that test.
Fair enough there. Jerry, interesting, the administration, meaning the Obama administration, had a news conference about this a little bit ago. There's no small controversy about it. Some folks felt like he's being just a bit tepid about it. We had to hear how mad he was from his chief of staff,
Right.
as opposed to him. What can the administration do? I mean, it's interesting how a president can be uninformed of something of this scope. It's interesting, isn't it?
And this was
Yeah.
something he also promised to deal with.
right.
So, I mean, that's the question. What do you do about it? It's obviously a huge issue that's going to take, some major reforms. So
sure.
you've got to do something besides just investigating and studying. Something's got to be done. Something's got to be done quickly.
I got another question. I've always wondered, we don't have as many veterans in our Congress as we used to.
Right.
Is that part of the problem here? Are we out of touch in our Congress about this issue?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was just actually talking with one of the Republican Senate candidates this week. He's talking about that. There's only one active military veteran in the Senate right now, in the U.S. Senate, McCain.
Right. Interesting. You ever thought of that, Javier? It's
Yeah,
interesting, isn't
a
it?
good friend of mine I was talking to right before this, she's a combat veteran, and she doesn't go to the VA here in Albuquerque. She just, she had some bad experiences there. She worked for Congressman Heinrich, and at some point we got to look at just overhauling the whole system, and maybe even considering one of the bold ideas I saw in the articles was just scrapping the application system and giving veterans the benefit of the doubt. If there's fraud later on, let's address it. But requiring them to prove that they've got this or that disability. I've got so many family members who've gone through that process, and it's just a travesty.
You know, I was in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, spent time in Somalia. My wife was an active duty Marine. I think the VA system needs to get away from building these clinics. HMOs haven't worked. The entire private sector insurance has moved away from the HMO model, yet the VA system is still really on the HMO model. You're going to come to our hospital, you're going to get treated by our doctor. You know, you look at the amount of veterans that live out in places like Rio Rancho, that live down in Artesia, Roswell, that live over in Magdalena. They got to drive all the way in Albuquerque to see a doctor. Why can't we pay the local doctor to take them like local patients and treat them where they need to be treated, which is at home? Treat them in the community that they live in. But to me, and I think you could do it much more efficiently and probably a lot cheaper than you can managing 800-bed hospitals on 28 acres in downtown Albuquerque or in New York or wherever. Let these local doctors, give them the opportunity, pay them a fair wage to see these individuals. And Javier's right. The paperwork that you have to go through, you are considered to be lying until about the 5th interview where someone will finally, and then even then, and if the VA was more welcoming, there wouldn't be an entire legal practice set up out there that says you've been denied your VA benefits, give us a call. And it just seems like when we sign these young people up and we send them to the MCRD and we tell them they got to swear in and they take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, we don't make, there's no hurdles they got to jump to get in the military and get shipped off. Right. It seems like when they come back, we throw unbelievable hurdles in front of people and we say to them, we appreciate your service, but we just don't have the time to help you right now. Good luck assimilating back into society. And it hasn't worked. The GI Bill is not working the way it should work. I mean, it's just the whole system for our veterans is not set up the way it should be. It's not a partisan issue, and I think the frustration is that at the end of the day, the President of the United States, I personally feel like, and this is not as a Republican, I personally feel like there's sort of been a, well, we'll get to it kind of attitude. And I think that frustrates people, whether they're Republicans or Democrats.
It's a big one. It's almost like a bruise for the nation. This just doesn't feel right. So we're going to have to get after this. Now, coming up, Mayor Richard J. Berry talks about his plans to reform APD.
And when the $24 million estimate was thrown out, I went to a local water board meeting. And even then, there were several members who were saying, well, we trust the Air Force, they'll take care of it. Where's the pressure been? It was not until several years ago that the state really began to put pressure on the Air Force. And if it weren't for that, would we even see what's happening now?